Hey everybody, John with Owl, and we just put a brand new GP Factor hidden winch on our Grenadier, and as we were putting this on, I thought it was a perfect opportunity to talk about spooling a winch. What is spooling a winch? Well, spooling is obviously creating a spool, like a spool of wire. But whether you have a steel or a synthetic line is this kind of flexible, synthetic material line, and a steel line is just that, it's steel. And the process is the same, but the ending, whether it's a steel or a synthetic line, is slightly different. And what we're going to do basically is put the line under tension while it's wrapped. And the reason we do that is we want to make sure there's no gaps in the line, because the rope will slot into those gaps and smash, and it'll prematurely degrade the power of your rope or the pulling capacity of your rope, if you will. So for this, you're going to need, well, you can do it by yourself, but I recommend 2 people. And then you're going to need a stationary object, which in this case is going to be a parking pole or bollard right there by that garage. You can do it off of a tree. You're going to need some basic winching kit, and if you have a winch, you should have that anyway. So let's go around to the back. We've got Logan, who's going to be kind enough to drive. And by drive, what Logan's going to be doing is he's going to, when we get going, he's going to fire up the Grenadier. And one of the things on the Grenadier is you have to have it in drive, reverse, or neutral to operate the winch switch. That's not true of other vehicles like a Sprinter, but in this case, he's going to have the ignition on, the vehicle in neutral. He's going to drag the brakes a little bit. You don't really need to do that because we've got a slight uphill, but certainly if you're flat or downhill, you don't want the vehicle to get momentum. You want to maintain constant tension on the line while you spool it, essentially pre-loading the line. So he's going to drag the brakes ever so slightly, and he's also going to, while I'm feeding the line in, I'm going to tell him, driver or passenger, to get the line to spool up properly, and you want to watch where that's going. So for this, what I'm going to grab here, I'm going to grab a tree saver and a soft shackle, and then you can grab gloves too. Always good to have gloves in your kit. So we're going to use this yellow bollard as our tree, and then we're going to connect our line to it, and once we get a little bit of tension, then we can lift this up off the ground. So now we're gonna, on the winch, we're gonna disengage the winch and pull all of the line out. If Logan needs to move back, he will. So we're just gonna disengage this. It's been a long day, my friends, I'm sorry. And then you see this black cover? That's gonna serve a couple of purposes. One, sun is the enemy of synthetic rope. So sun is gonna prematurely degrade, I'm guessing it's nylon. I don't really know what synthetic rope is, but it's going to degrade the synthetic rope. And this does a good job of keeping the sun off that final wrap on the drum. It's also going to be an indicator, if you're not looking, which you should be, if you're winching and you feel this rope coming through, and you should be standing away from the rope, but that'll give you a heads up that you're approaching the very end of your line. That is a very hard winch. Most of them are not like this. So with a soft shackle, now this soft shackle looks way more rigid than other soft shackles that you may have seen. This is from ASR. And what they do is they actually coat it in a UV protectant coating. So although it actually feels kind of cheap, it's actually way nicer than one that isn't coated. So you never want to use, I guess you could, but typically you don't want to use a shackle with a hook that is designed like this, and you also don't want to use a soft shackle if this corner is not radiused. So if you have a hook that's sharp, you can't use a soft shackle. And for those that don't know, the soft shackle is obviously this blue thing. You can see in here, if you peek in here, see that red line? That's going to be your safety indicator that you're almost out of line. And one of the things that's important to keep in mind, a winch is rated to a certain poundage. What's the rating on this one? 10? So this one's 12. So you're only going to get that on the first wrap of the rope. Think about it like gears of a bicycle. If you've got a gear that's this big, that's different from a gear that's this big. So what's going to happen? Well, the smaller the spool, the more power, okay? But the slower it goes. And so on the first wrap, you're going to have the full power of the winch. So if this one's 10,000 pounds, we'll confirm, you're gonna have 10,000 pounds. Then on the second spool, it's gonna be down to like 9,000, and the third spool, 7,000 or 8,000. So just keep that in mind. What we recommend, this is about a little over 6,000 pounds with a Sprinter van. You're gonna be up in the 8 to 10,000 pound range. So with a 12,000 pound winch, you're right at the edge of your window of usability. So that's when you're gonna wanna put a pulley and loop off something like we have right there and back to the vehicle, which is gonna have the speed of your winch and double the power, if that makes sense. So we're almost at the red line. There we go. I've never had a winch this hard to pull out. Hopefully as it gets used, it gets easier. Now we're not under any real tension. You would never be this close to a winch if it was actually under real tension. Okay, so now you don't want to keep going past this. You've got one wrap on there. You do not want to go any further. Okay, I should have stopped them a little bit sooner. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get the remote. So now we're going to flip our winch to engaged. We're going to take this line. Now you want to make sure you don't run over the line. So in this case, you can flick it over something to make sure it doesn't go under the tire. And then you should have it in and out. So what you're going to do now is I'm going to get this a little bit taut and put the first spool on myself, and then I'm going to raise that up off the ground a little bit. So with the first spool, the important thing is you want to lay the rope as tight as you can to each other without leaving a gap. All right, you neutral? All right, so we got a little bit of a gap. Oh, this is frustrating. Most winches you can reach in there and move the line over a little bit. This one is going to be persnickety. All right, so I'm going to back up now and get my face out of there. So one of the things I want to keep in mind here, you never want to have your hands in here. You never want to do this with like a hoodie with crap that's hanging down. So you just want to stay away from the front of the winch. And so what I'm doing right now with my hand is I'm guiding it right and left so that it lays down well. Drag the brakes. All right, so we've completely finished our first pass, and look at that line. It's perfectly spooled in there. And we don't have much tension on this rope. So again, if you're actually winching, you want to be nowhere near the line. We've got very little pressure on this line right now. That vehicle's in neutral with a slight drag on the brakes. So again, you stay the heck away from the line if you're actually winching. So now we're going to go back across the drum the other way. All right, we've reached the end of our second spool. You just continue going back and forth until you're out of rope. I'm gonna go back. I screwed it up. I roll backwards. So I had a gap in the line, and so I'm gonna unspool it. And one of the nice things about synthetic rope is synthetic ropes, what I say is they don't hold a charge. And what I mean by that is a steel cable, when it's under tension, is like a spring. When it snaps, it flies around. Same is true if you were to unweight a steel cable right now, it would bird's nest in there. So with a synthetic line, you can actually release tension and it doesn't bird's nest. All right, back up. Okay, hold on. There you go. All right, straight. There you go. All right, break. So now we're at the last, I don't know, 8 feet. You're gonna pull this amount of winch line out every time you winch anyway. So at this point you're fine. Now if you've got a steel cable, you're gonna need to release this and keep a lot of tension on it, or you're gonna get that to rat's nest up. With a synthetic line, that's not an issue. So I'm just gonna back off the pressure a little bit. Undo my soft shackle. And then, so you don't drag your soft shackle, you can set it there. Now you still want to keep a little bit of tension on this so it spools nicely. Then we're going to unplug it. And that is how you spool a winch line. Hopefully that was informative. Remember, whenever you're doing anything when it comes to winching, go slow, be careful. You should never have your hands in there with the winch on. If you get nervous, you can always unplug it. The winch is not going to move on its own if your remote's unplugged. If you have a wireless remote, please be careful not to set it on the ground and like step on it while you're doing something else. Set it on your hood or something like that. So just take some extra time when you're doing things with a winch. They can be dangerous, but if used properly, they're going to let you go on many more exciting adventures and adventure farther. Thanks so much. And if you want to see more of our videos, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. Happy adventures.